Okay. All right, fun guest this week. If we had like a Mount Rushmore of best OU softball Twitter followers or follows, Seth Oliveras would be in there somewhere. So he's going to join us a few minutes to talk about his thoughts from this season, everything that he's seen. But Seth, I appreciate you doing this. I actually want to start with a question that Alex Storako put out, and I believe that you responded to it. Storako said this week, okay, serious question. What's your fave moment / highlight of the season so far? I know you followed this team every single pitch so far this year. There's a lot of moments to pick from. What is your favorite moment so far this season, 34 games in?
Yeah, so I saw that question, and I love the responses that question from Alex got. And mine, the first one that came to mind, even though we're fresh off this Texas weekend, which had so many great moments.
Yeah.
Mine was definitely the UCLA game, and specifically that second inning, the top of the second. I mean, just blast after blast, home run after home run. I mean, it just, especially up to that point in the season, there was a lot of talk about the OU doesn't really necessarily have maybe the firepower that it had last couple seasons. There was a lot of outside noise, and then for it to come against that team, just flip-flop number one and number two. Everything kind of came together at that moment, and then the party was started after that. The rest of the game was just as wild, but yeah, that for me, I think had my level of elation was at its peak at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. We shouldn't be surprised about anything that we see with this program anymore, but the season had, as crazy as it is to say, maybe a little bit of a different feel going to that game than it does now. And because I totally anticipated a really tight one-run ball game that day. And yeah, it wasn't like we had to wait until the fifth or sixth inning. That second inning was a barrage. They've had a lot of really good innings this year, but like if we're talking about the best single inning of this year, it would have to be that UCLA second inning, I would think.
Yeah, because you consider opponent as well, because I know in one of those Kentucky games they had a ton of bombs as well. But yeah, considering the opponent, the time of year, and like you said, kind of the feeling of the season up to that point going into the third week, it just things were kind of a little here and there, and then for it to come against that opponent in California, everybody was watching. I mean, I wish I could have been there at the ballpark that day. It looked like it was a blast, a ton of UCLA, a ton of OU fans. So yeah, for everything, the stars aligned in that game, in that moment, and it was amazing to watch.
This game isn't my favorite. It's more of like an underrated submission, but we might look back at it as the game that Jordy got right and maybe got back to being her dominant self. I mean, one of the highest ranked matchups that we've seen at Marina Hines Field in a long time, OU and Florida State, and Jordy comes in and was the star. And I don't know how you feel about that as an underrated submission, but it just kind of feels like she's been on her A game since that night.
Yeah, no, I definitely thought about that one as well. And that one, I feel like, even though it was as big as it was, I mean, that's definitely one of the big matchups of the season up to this point in college softball, period. I feel like with it being a midweek game, it was just a one, it wasn't a full series. It kind of feels like it got swept under the rug a little bit, but you're totally right. Like Jordy, when she came in, I mean, she locked it down. Like that was her like at her best, when we've seen her at her best plenty of times. And this season, I think that has definitely been kind of the igniter for her. And since then, she's really been dialed in, and it's pretty amazing to see, because we already know what we've got, in Nicole May, Alex Storako, even Kirsten Deal come in. And like for Jordy to be, what we know she can be, and what she can continue to be and become, for her to be at that point now. And, we still got a few weeks to go before postseason. That's a pretty scary thing to think about.
I was jealous of you and about 9,000 other OU fans on Friday night. The atmosphere looked incredible on TV. What was it like being there at Hall of Fame Stadium?
Oh my God. So that was it. As far as like in-person things, that was definitely my highlight of the season, just to be there, record-breaking regular season crowd. The atmosphere, it felt like this is what OU softball could be like, maybe decades down the road if
Mhm.
they're able to expand to a stadium that's similar to that size. I know we've got a big one coming up with the Loves Field, but man, I mean, the just you could just feel the power of OU's fan base in that game. You could feel the rival. It felt like a rivalry. Like I'm honestly really glad that Texas has kind of been where they've been the last couple of years as far as how competitive they are, because that makes that rivalry so much more fun.
Yeah.
And so you could just with every pitch, with every time stoppage, every time Mike White came out on the field, you just felt that power, that energy. And it was a blast to be a part of. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's a game that we're going to look back at 10 and 15 years, and it's one of those games that you're going to remember. Like maybe they break their own attendance record. Is anyone going to be surprised about that if they do that in 5 years? I mean, I know I won't be, but it was just a perfect scenario, man. Like you're having that game at Hall of Fame Stadium, trying to break the record, your biggest rival, and then everything Mike White said. So can you describe like the venom that was in the air on that Friday night? Like every time he went to the circle, because I can't imagine being there and what that felt like.
Oh, it was real. The venom was real, and something that like really just kind of a light bulb went off was when every time they pretty much do it like on in every opportunity. OU fans someone will start a Boomer Sooner chant. Someone will say Boomer, and there were a lot of where I was sitting. I was sitting in section 18, which is pretty much at the end of right field. Uh, there were some children, like maybe I don't know, ranging from like 8 to 12, just throughout my section. Whenever someone would start a Boomer Sooner chant, after we get through those 3 Boomer Sooners, one of those kids would say Texas, and everybody follows it up, and then so it just sparked a light bulb in my head because like this is probably a lot of these kids maybe first moments of
Oh yeah.
feeling this rivalry, maybe in any sport, but maybe at least for softball. And they're going to be, they're going to continue to follow this sport, follow this program, be fans of OU. And this is kind of like it's being born in them. And I'm kind of just sitting here witnessing it, this venom, the love to hate kind of a thing. It just to see it kind of happening organically right in front of me, with these kids was pretty awesome. They're having a ton of fun with it, and of course, all the adults around. Whenever they would say Texas, the sucks part probably got louder than a lot of the Sooners after a lot of the Boomers. So it was fun to watch, and I mean, yeah, having Mike White say what he said just a day or two before that game. Yeah, I didn't think it could get more intense, and it got a lot more intense because of that.
What did you think about all that? I mean, the initial comments, what he said Friday after the game, I didn't call her a cheater. I may have insinuated it. Like, I don't know. I don't think that he came out of last weekend looking all that great. Like, what were just your thoughts of the whole situation?
Yeah, I really think he had an opportunity in that post game after on Friday's game. I think he had an opportunity to maybe try to, I don't know, clean up or do something else with that and to kind of lessen the impact it had. And I think he just kind of almost doubled down on it. Like you said, he insinuated it. He acknowledged what he was saying, but he was trying to put it into context, but it didn't work. So, I mean, for him to say that, I just feel like, I think if I'm trying to get into his head, I think he probably wishes he didn't say that on record. Like, it's okay to feel that way. There's probably a lot of coaches, honestly, that feel that way. And for, it's, probably unfounded because a lot of us that follow this program closely and, know Patty Gasso and all that. I don't think what those accusations are alleging to have any merit at all. So I just think that he really, if he could go back in time, he would probably not say those things on record because it was a very bad look. And OU, Sooner Nation definitely responded appropriately, I would feel.
Yeah. Well, you just said a couple of minutes ago that, Texas being good has helped out this rivalry. And I totally agree with that. Not that you or I are ever rooting for Texas or anything, but when you look at this rivalry, it has made it better. And as much as I disagree with Mike White, even after all the names I called him last week, it does make the rivalry more fun. I mean, I don't know if that's bad to admit or not, but it does. But where do you think now that Mike White ranks in all sports in terms of like the biggest villains to OU fans? Like, is he top 3? Is he top 5? Is he number one? I think he's got to be pretty high at the list. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, it might be recency bias, but I think he's as far as just other coaches that how you feel fans feel about him. I think he's at the top right now. I think he's number one. I can already see it. If OU and Texas get matched up in the Big 12 tournament, it's going to be the same thing. Like it's not going to be any different. OU fans are going to take just as much pleasure in beating Texas and having Mike White, be embarrassed or whatever it is. So I think he's number one right now. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that are out there.
Lincoln Riley, of course, is up there.
Okay, yeah, Lincoln Riley for sure. And I mean, if that ever happens, if OU's ever matched up with USC while Lincoln Riley is there, that'll definitely be like the number one, once it happens. But I think for this particular moment in time, as we sit here early April, it's Mike White.
Yeah. I love the stats and the numbers that you put out on your Twitter page. I'm going to run down something that you sent out 3 days ago. Like there's a lot of numbers and a lot of stats here, but you tell me which one you think is the most impressive. So you tweeted out 2023 Oklahoma Sooners softball by the numbers through week 8. 33-1, 6-0 Big 12 win-loss record. 15-1 against top 25 teams. 19 wins via run rule. 300 runs scored. 33 runs allowed. 63 home runs. 19 shutouts. 9 errors. 270 strikeouts through 202 innings. And a 25-game win streak. There's a lot there. That's a great tweet. But which one to you is the single most impressive?
Honestly, to me, it's got to be the ranked wins. And then people will have this question, so I'll just go ahead and answer it now. How I do ranked wins is because there are so many polls out there, and it seems like other different programs kind of lean into different ones. So as long as a team is ranked in at least 2 of the major polls, so like the D1, Softball America, USA, or the what is it? There's another one out there, NFCA. As long as there's a team that's ranked in at least 2 of those 4, I'll consider them a ranked team. And so that's how I get that number, that figure. So for OU to be 15-1, and then Baylor being the one loss that they're ranked right now, that to me, that figure is so impressive because we've seen OU over the years dominate like they are now, but against less ranked teams.
Yeah,
just fewer ranked teams. They just have fewer opportunities. And obviously they proved it in the postseason that it wasn't just a fluke and they're beating up on little, unranked teams. They could beat anybody. So, but for them to actually be proving it now in the season, in the regular season, and still doing it the way that they're still putting up, they're still outscoring teams 9-1 or whatever it is. To me, that says as much as anything, as any of those stats, that this team is one of the most impressive teams in college softball history.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all that. And there's just so many household names on this roster. All 3 names in the circle, right? Jada Coleman, maybe he's the player of the year. Alyssa Brito right behind her, Kinsey Hansen. But if I were to ask you, Seth, like who's having an under the radar season that we're not talking enough about, does anyone necessarily come to your mind on that?
Yeah, so I've been on record saying that I'm definitely a huge Alyssa Brito fan, but because she had a really good year last year and she's having an even better year this year, I won't consider her for this. But I'll say honestly, Haley Lee to me, with what she's done. She's obviously a transfer from Texas A&M, and how quickly she was able to kind of carve her space out in this roster and on this in this lineup. If people recall, she was the first Sooner to hit a home run this season. It came in that walk-off against Stanford. And so, I mean, she really hasn't taken her foot off the gas at all up to this point. And I just feel like she's very consistent. It seems like every weekend she makes at least 2, maybe 3 big plays that even if they're not home runs, they're driving somebody around the bases. She's getting on base. Like it's very impressive what she's been able to do. And then on top of that, for her to do what she was able to do in those first few weeks while Kinsey Hansen was out as a catcher, because she's been a catcher before. She was a catcher at A&M, and for her to come in and be able to come in and spell Hansen, whenever, if it's either her or Sophia Nugent, but for her to be able to be that kind of a player as well, she's even, been an infielder. She's just, to me, been very, very impressive. Definitely as advertised. I remember when she was coming in, she announced that she was transferring here. I was already excited. And I mean, yeah, I think she's definitely going to be someone who we're going to continue to see make plays, whether they're, walk-offs or, those kinds of highlight moment plays. Like, she's going to make plays very consistently from here until the end of the year.
Well, you were there Friday night. Can you confirm that ball she hit actually landed?
I in person I didn't see it land, but yeah, once I watched the replay later, yeah, that was amazing. And then for Tiare also, going yard, and that was, yeah, another thing I love about Haley Lee is just, it almost like you can tell she's about to hit a home run, just like she puts everything into those swings, and it's nice to watch. Like, it's fun to watch those players that are just, smooth with it, and then they hit a home run, and you don't even think they did it until it finally goes over the fence. But you can tell just from the swing that she's putting her all into it, and so once she makes contact, you just know it's out.
Oh, I said on Sunday that, Jocelyn Erickson, everyone talks about her just natural, beautiful swing. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about there is, man, it just looks so beautiful from the left side. But Haley Lee, man, when she from the right side, when she turns on a fastball, like, it's a different type of beautiful swing, but it's just so violent. I love it. And then she, boom, stomps on home plate after that. I'm like, yes. It just, I don't know, man. There are just so many things to get me fired up. And when Haley Lee stomps on home plate, dude, that's one of them. I'm curious what you think about this, because they still got to win a national championship. I mean, obviously, but they look like they're very, very much poised to do that. If they win 3 straight and they continue to look dominant this year like they have up to this point, what are we talking about in terms of like most dominant 3-year stretches or stretches in OU athletics history? I mean, the 47-game win streak in football is always going to stand as kind of the, when you look at a win streak or a string of 3 year, 4 years, whatever, you're always going to look at that one. But I wonder if they win the title this year, what this 3-year, like how that's going to match up to anything anyone else has ever done in OU athletics history before.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be up there with, what we've seen from the gymnastics programs, men and women's teams. Obviously, yeah, the Bud Wilkinson, those kind of golden years there in football are going to be, that's setting the bar for college football in a lot of ways as well. So it's going to be up. It's going to be second to none, if anything. Like, if it's not the most impressive 3-year run, especially because we're living in a point in time now where college softball has the most parity. The most, there's obviously the most teams that have ever been competing. There are new teams that are total contenders, like Clemson. That's a new program. That program is not old at all, and they're already, probably OKC bound this season. And so there's so much talent. The coaching talent across the board is as high as it's ever been. So for OU to not only, if they can capture a 3rd straight title this season, not only will they have done it for 3 straight years, but it's the way they've done it as well might be the most impressive thing, and maybe something that we may never see again unless OU just keeps this train going, which, I mean, there's no reason why they wouldn't, at least for the foreseeable future, at least stay competitive, if not the most dominant team in probably college sports right now. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I'm super biased, obviously, but in my opinion, it's going to be at least tied with the most impressive thing that any OU athletics team has ever done, if not the most impressive.
Who do you think is the second best team right now? I mean, OSU by the rankings, they're number 2 in most polls. They just lost to Wichita State. Who do you think's best or second best team in college softball?
Honestly, I think at the end of the day, it's still UCLA. I think, and I know they've been run ruled not only by OU, but they had a game against Cal that really didn't go their way at all. They lost one against Washington, but I think they just recently got back Aaliyah Jordan, and it just seems like that pitching staff is kind of growing into its own. It's not just Megan Framo and the rest. Yanez is really impressive. So I just feel like, and honestly, if OU and UCLA meet again, I would expect Yanez to be the pitcher. And we don't know how this lineup is going to do against that because we didn't see her in that matchup earlier this season. So I think at the end of the day, it's still UCLA. Just from a talent perspective, an experience perspective, they've got it all. But I mean, another team that I would think of that I could also see making a run to the very end is Tennessee. I think Tennessee has the pitching staff to do it, and pitching pretty much wins out almost every time in the postseason. And they've also got some good firepower as well. They've got a couple Sooners as well, so that might help.
It would make for an interesting storyline, huh?
Oh, that would make for a very interesting storyline to see Donahue up against her former teammates and coaches. So, but yeah, it's a great. This is going to be one of the most fun kind of paths to watch for the softball world, because there are so many teams. I think Clemson, they were close last year, but they just didn't have enough. But Valerie Cagle, she's looking. If it's not Jada Coleman as best player in the nation, it's Valerie Cagle. I feel like it's kind of down to those two right now. But yeah, that they're great. There's so many teams that can really make a push. But for me, it's still UCLA is that number 2.
Full disclosure, if you're listening to this right now, Seth and I are talking on Thursday, a few hours before OU and Tech. Game 1's going to get underway. So I'm going to let Seth call his shot a little bit here. And when you predict an OU softball 3-game series, you really have to say, okay, well, how many games do they win and how many of those games are by run rule? That's kind of how you have to go about it. So, Seth, Thursday, they haven't played a game yet this series. How many games will OU win? How many of them will be by run rule over Tech this weekend?
Wow, I'll say they definitely sweep, but Tech is sneaky. I think Tech will hit at least 4. I'm gonna make this shot. I think they're gonna hit at least 4 home runs.
Ooh,
I know that sounds like a lot. And I really don't want to see them hit 4 home runs. But I think they've got like 2 or 3 more than OU on the season. They're like up there, but their average is lower because they played a lot more games. But anyways, I see OU sweeping. I think OU run rules tonight's game, Thursday night game, and then I think they run rule the Saturday game. I think the tomorrow's game, the game 2, will be relatively closer, but I don't think any of these games are going to be nail biters by any stretch.
Give Seth a follow on Twitter at Seth Oliveras, Oliveras. Before you get out of here, so I've already said that you're on the Mount Rushmore of OU softball Twitter followers. Give me and some other people out there, like if you want good, maybe not someone who covers the team, but if you're looking more of like an OU softball fan that's active on social media, they put out good stuff, they're entertaining. 2, 3, however many other OU softball Twitter follows that you like on social media.
Yeah. Okay. So let me make sure there's so many fans that I've come to know really well, and through this sport, following the sport. One of my good friends, Andrew, Sooner Soup guy, I believe is his at. He's definitely a great follow. Let's see, Jackie Wins. She follows really all sports, but especially softball as well. That's definitely another one. And I would say Jessica Boehm is definitely
Love
one
Jessica.
of my followers.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she always has some really interesting stats. I can tell she's doing a lot of research. So those are some just off the top of my head. But yeah, it's a good community. It's a great community, and it's only continuing to grow.
It's true, man. I really appreciate you doing this, and have fun watching the softball this weekend. And we're definitely going to do this again soon, if you're up for it, of course.
I'm always up. I'm always down.
Thank
you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, seriously, dude. Thanks again.